This is a special podcast presentation from 700WLW.com. This is Darryl Parks On Demand.
All right, I'm Darryl Parks. About 6 after 10 o'clock. It was great to finally hear my tongue is in my cheek here. To hear a politician such as Mr. Barack tell us all that we want to pay more in taxes. In fact, polls are showing that 80% of us want to pay more in taxes. Now, how did they, when they were writing the script for that, how did they figure the figure of 80%? It must be true. Come on. I mean, I go through life like this every day. I get up in the morning, and anytime I buy anything, I often think to myself, I'm not paying enough for that. I go to a ball game at Great American Ballpark, that's $7.50 or whatever it is, a beer. That's not enough. I think a more fair price for that bottle of Bud Light is, let's say, $10.50. I think that's more fair. Or when I go to the BP station and I note that a gallon of gas is $3.65 a gallon, I think $4.25 a gallon is much more reasonable. Or when I head over to Home Depot to buy a gallon of paint, I'm thinking, how do they keep the lights on in this place? Please take $75 for the gallon of paint. Does this guy think we're morons? And that's a rhetorical question because the answer is yes. Not only does Mr. Barack think we're morons, every one of them think we're morons. And we're not paying attention. These people have set themselves up into jobs for life. These individuals are all about being reelected. They're all about becoming millionaires, becoming wealthy on you and me. And they treat us like sheeple. They do. Sheeple. They think we're morons. As an anecdote, I have often wondered why people buy vanity plates for their cars. Would you agree with me that a license plate is a tax? Right? It's a tax. It's a tax we're paying for the right to drive our vehicle on state roads. So people that buy vanity plates are really asking or telling the governor that, Governor, that $49 a plate or for my license, for my vehicle, it's not enough. I want you to double that so I can get some vanity plates. I want to pay more taxes, Mr. Kasich. You probably haven't thought of it that way, but that's what you're doing if you buy vanity plates. You're asking the state, no matter what state it is, you're asking the state to allow you to pay more in taxes than you have to. So with that reasoning, yesterday in his press conference, the president claimed 80% of the public supports a demand for tax increases. Incredible. And there are people that are nodding their heads. Yeah, that's a good idea. Let's pay more in taxes. Would you think about going into Kroger and asking to pay more for the gallon of milk? The box of Cheerios? Would you think about going into Lowe's or Home Depot and wanting to pay more for paint or lawn fertilizer? Or if you have to buy a hose, whatever they charge for a hose is not enough. Please take more. Would you do that? Of course not. This morning's paper has a headline on the front page of the Cincinnati Enquirer. Low city tax rate has price. Subheadline: Did council err in failing to raise it? The problem is not the revenue. The problem is the spending. This past week, the Wall Street Journal had an article about the cost of our stadiums on the riverfront. This is the shocking figure. Over 16% of the entire county budget goes to pay for those stadiums. Let me say something that may be going through your mind. There are individuals that ought to be in jail for cutting the deal they did to build those stadiums. Jail. Malfeasance. Public malfeasance. You know, John Dowling passed away. He was one of those involved in the whole negotiation. He was the dissenter in 1996 and said, "Hey, this is a bad deal." He just died this week. Everyone else seemed to be crawling on their bellies over broken glass to get Mike Brown, and at that time, was it Marchot, the owner of the Reds, to sign the deal so we could build them stadiums. How can our county, Hamilton County, continue to exist fiscally if 16% of the total budget goes to pay the mortgages on 2 stadiums? It can't. It simply cannot. But yet, and using our local county government here, yet we continue to go and elect the same clowns to office. We do it over and over again in Hamilton County. The city of Cincinnati continues to elect the same clowns to city council. We continue to elect the same clowns to Congress. They're not willing to do what's right. They're not willing to make the hard decisions. It's all about creating fear for certain groups in our country. You know, now it's all about taxing the wealthy. You know, this class warfare that's been waged over the last number of months. So let me ask a question. How is this equal protection under our laws? You ever think of it that way? How can a certain class of people or a certain segment of our country be taxed at one level and another level taxed at another group taxed at another level? How is that possible when the 14th Amendment says equal protection of the laws? No state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor deny any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws. That's the 14th Amendment. Constitution. You know, the thing that those in Washington rarely read. You know, I made the point on my Facebook page this past week, you know, when Senator McConnell out of Kentucky came up with the idea of giving the power to raise the debt limit to the president. And the comment was simple. Expenses, making payments, controlling the money. Is that under the Constitution not the responsibility of the Congress and that branch of government? You see, he's playing politics. Playing politics with your life. No one knows what's going to happen on August 2nd. if the United States just all of a sudden says, hey, look, we're not good for our debts. What the hell? Don't worry about it. We'll get around to paying the bill. They're just playing chicken. You know, there's doom and gloom from all sides. No one knows what's going to happen. What's going to happen if it, from what I have read, is gasoline prices are going to skyrocket. Interest rates, if let's say you're planning on buying a home right now, interest rates are going to skyrocket. Your cost of living is going to skyrocket. Why? Because the rest of the world is going to view us as deadbeats. Years ago, being a deadbeat was a really bad thing. Not anymore. It's okay to be a deadbeat. Why not? Interesting, isn't it? In 1973, what ended up happening, the Supreme Court voted 9-0 in a case that said it was okay to tax people at different levels. And the case was Lenhausen versus Lakeshore Auto Parts. And it said the 14th Amendment doesn't apply to state governments when it comes to taxes. And what happened there was state governments at that point was they were free to tax people at different levels, and then it went to the United States and to the IRS, and everyone started being taxed at different levels. It's time for it's just time for a flat tax. See, the problem is about 50%, 51% of this country really doesn't pay any taxes. They get more from government than they put in. And those are the people that elect these clowns over and over and over again. And here's the bottom line. I'm going to put it into perspective. As Willie would say, I'm going to put the cheese on the cracker. How much money do you have laying around your house right now? You have $100? Maybe $1,000? What do you have in your wallet? Because right now, these numbers of 14 trillion and 8 trillion and whatever, inconceivable. The true debt of this country is north of $60 trillion. This is what you owe. $534,000. You have that laying around? I don't have it laying around. But that's what you owe. Because of the continued malfeasance of people we put in office, whose main job is one thing: manage the money and make long-term plans with that money. And in the case of Senator McConnell playing the politics, he'd just rather change the Constitution. 18 after 10 on the big one, 700 WL. Fox 19 Storm Tracker forecast from meteorologist Steve Horsemeyer. For today, partly cloudy. It's going to be warm and humid, maybe an afternoon thunderstorm. High of around 88. Tonight, clear, warm, and muggy for game number 2 of the Reds and the Cards in that series. A low of 70 overnight. And then tomorrow, partly sunny, hot and humid. Maybe some showers in the afternoon, early evening, and a high of 90. Get ready for this week, man. It's going to be in the mid-90s. In fact, all across the Midwest and some cities like Minneapolis, over 100. Man, this is going to be a hot and a scorching week all over. Currently, we're at 73, 700 WLW. I'm Darryl Parks, 513-749-7000. Should a line become available, people all PO'd this morning about inaction of Congress and inaction and the malfeasance of people we elect to be responsible with our tax dollars. To Walton we go. Here is Paul, 700 WLW.
Darryl, thanks for taking my call. I appreciate your points today. Every airplane I build doesn't fly, but I believe this one will. I worked out a way that Darryl Parks and every patriot in America can get in the face of the Supreme Court, the President, and Congress and vent for about 5 minutes. Of course, we'll have certain guidelines. It has to be clean. It has to be, et cetera. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it has to be. There has to be decorum, right? How do you do it, Paul?
Doing fine.
No, how do you do it? What's your idea?
I can't let that out because it's being built as we speak, but it will be video. So Willie, Doc, and Darryl each can send it in there, and we can work this out to where that you can not only talk to Congress.
Wait, you have a secret plan?
It's not a secret, but I don't want to let it out, and we got to make sure it has certain safeguards so it can't be hacked. But I just want to let people know
see here, Paul. Yeah. Time is running short. Today we sit here on a Saturday. It's July 16th.
Yes, sir.
You know, I have no idea what's going to happen on August 2nd. Do you have any idea?
No, I don't. I can't tell the future.
Yeah. I'm talking about the economy. These guys are playing chicken. These guys, no one knows. And they're playing chicken, and there are those that are willing to play politics and send and not do the right thing and not make hard decisions. They're only worried about being reelected.
That's the problem.
And that's wrong.
They're playing politics, and that they shouldn't do that. But I want Darryl Parks to be able to not just speak to these thousands today, but I want him to be able to get right in the face of John Boehner, Barack Obama, the Supreme Court, and every member of Congress.
All right. Well, Paul, let me know what your secret plan is, because I'm there for you.
Well, as Dick Cheney said several years ago, help's on the way, Darryl. Thank you, man.
I got you. Take care, Paul. Paul with his secret plan. Susan in Ludlow, 700 WLW.
Hey, Darryl. How are you today?
Not bad. How are you?
I'm doing well.
Good.
Thanks for talking to me. Hey, when you're talking about taxes, it dawned on me. Now, I'm from Kentucky, not a Hamilton County taxpayer, but if your Governor Kucinich can renegotiate the casino deal, because it wasn't a good deal for the taxpayers, why can't he do the same on the stadium deal?
Well, the stadium is owned by Hamilton County, so the governor has no dog in the fight.
Okay. Well, then, on the federal budget and taxes and spending, why doesn't everybody in the federal government take a 25% tax
cut, yeah.
Cut, along with benefits, and pay 25% more on their medical? And that includes
Susan, that's too obvious.
Oh, okay.
That's too obvious, yeah.
Okay.
See, that's the right thing to do. You may do that if you ran a company. I may do that if I ran a company. But will they do it? No.
But wouldn't that generate some revenue?
Sure, it would.
Our tax dollars go to pay.
Here's the problem. It's not going to generate the revenue that is needed.
Well, true.
But it would be good public relations that they are willing to make a sacrifice. They are willing to make the same sacrifice that you, Susan, in Ludlow, or me, Darryl, who lives in Anderson Township, that we would be willing to make, or we're being asked to make, because of just a mess as far as the finances of our country. All right, to a cell phone, and Danny, 700 WLW.
Yes, I watched that press conference. Why don't the press conference, the press court just send mannequins there rather than human beings? And is there anything in your imagination that this guy could say that they might say, hey, you're probably, you might be lying? Is there anything that this guy can say that maybe the press court shows any ounce of integrity?
Well, let's do talk show host 101. When somebody throws some statistics at you, the first question back is excuse me, where'd you get that information? And the person will normally babble. All right. Now, no one at that press conference yesterday said, "Well, Mr. President, where is where was this survey that 80% of us want to pay more taxes?" No one asked the question. And the reason no one asked the question, Danny, is very simple. They want to continue having access to the president. Because if they ask him a tough question, he won't ever ask them to ask a question of him again. And they will lose their access to him. And that is not what being a reporter is all about. 29 after 10 on the big one, 700 WLW. I'm Darryl Parks. Good morning. Mark writes on my Facebook page, he says, the POTUS BHO is delusional. There you go. Mark, I agree with you. Delusional. So didn't we have a small issue over taxes with England? Obama lies, taxes rise. Well, yesterday at the press conference, this is what he said, you have 80% of the American people who support a balanced approach. 80% of the American people support an approach that includes revenues and includes cuts. So the notion that somehow the American people aren't sold is not the problem. So here's the poll. A Gallup poll cited by the White House as the main basis for his statement actually found that 69% supported tackling the deficit with a mix of spending cuts and tax increases. An additional 4% favored tax increases only. Keep the math going in your head. A group that does not endorse Obama's balanced approach but could reasonably be counted on his side. That brings his support to 73%. Obama can get closer to 80% by counting only by counting those who didn't belong in that group, people who declined to give an opinion or volunteered an idea of their own to reduce deficits. And then you have to take into account the plus or minus 4 percentage points of error in the poll. That was classic. Boy, talk about operating in shades of gray. Incredible. In Reynoldsburg, Steve, 700 WLW.
Thanks, Darryl, for not taking somebody else's call. On this taxes and entitlements and the Bureau of Motor Vehicles, we had a great story come up last night in Columbus. The state's considering closing, I think, 50 branches of Bureau of Motor Vehicles to save money.
Yeah.
Guy gets on the telly, and he says, "This is horrible. I live right across the street from one now, and if this goes through, I'd have to drive 20 miles. So I got a question of this guy. How many times a year do you go to the Bureau of Motor Vehicles? And why don't you use the mail-in option to get your plates renewed if you're bothered by this?"
Steve, exactly. At most, you go once a year.
Yeah, exactly.
And you don't even have to go once a year. The only time you really have to go is when you have to renew your driver's license.
Every 4 years.
Yes.
This guy can't drive 20 miles in every 4 years? I got a quick question for you.
Yes, sir.
You know, Richard in Indian Hill, Nick, his hubby, and you apparently are going to go to a Reds game and sit in the bleachers.
Yeah, we'll do the bleachers.
Can I take a picture of that if you guys will do OHIO for me?
Sure.
Thank you very much.
All right. We want. You know what, Steve?
Yes.
We won't even do one like our good friend Roy Miracle.
Okay. And by the way, were you surprised that Mitch McConnell pulled that stunt? Remember this. Obviously, you can't give the president the budget power. That's with the House Ways and Means Committee.
Mm-hmm.
They've already given the president the right to declare war. I mean, were you surprised?
Oh, no. I mean, it's just simple politics.
Oh, okay.
You know, it's not following the basis of our Constitution and our form of government, which has three branches. Well, let's give him the responsibility of spending the money. That's minutia to us. When in reality, that's what they're elected to do, to spend our money, to spend it wisely, to manage our money, and then make plans for our future. Which, of course, the plans don't look out very far. In Fairborn, here's Jerry, 700 WLW.
Hey, boss. Good show. Half-truths, myth-truths, and outright lies. This guy's the most disingenuous politician. What bugs me is that the same, whether it's white guilt or, you know, their bigoted ethnicity and they choose to vote the way they vote, they will not educate themselves. The media is invested in this guy because they bought into it and they got him elected. It just bugs me. No offense. I mean, I kind of respect the guy. I get the shtick every once in a while when I hear him call up. But if you have a degree from Dartmouth in economics, call up about the disaster that we're in budgetary. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Don't call in about freaking NASCAR. Everybody has a hard time in the first race. MIS, whatever. I'm not like a giant fan, but I've been there. It's a boondoggle. You know what I mean?
Whoa, Jerry, when did you change topics?
I don't know. Richard has so much more to talk about as far as, like, economics and stuff. Let's focus on that because we're in a disaster right now. But with regard to Obama, man, and all these knuckleheads.
Back to Obama. Okay. Yeah, go ahead. I'm following you now.
Well, it's just like, how do you, me and you, just our budget. There's no way. You have to. This is not complicated, man. You put an independent trucker and a farmer in office, you will fix this situation.
Of course.
But they keep buying into these knuckleheads that are, you know, have Esquire at the back of their name or whatever. I don't see why simple people, honest, good people, are pushed out. They have made the system into an abortion, basically. It's sick.
No, you know what it is, Jerry? I believe in good in people, and I think everyone has good. The problem is the system corrupts, and the way it's set up. And if you're called to public life, and you're called to a life of wanting to serve people, and I'm saying this with all sincerity, that you want to be elected to your school board, or you want to be elected to your city council or a county committee, whatever it is, all right, and that you want to help out people. I think people get into public life because they have a basic good. The problem is the system corrupts. For instance, if you're elected to Congress, you're a congressman or a congresswoman. Your term is 2 years. Immediately, you need to start raising money. Your entire day is about raising money for your next election. The millions upon millions of dollars it costs to be elected to office. Here in Hamilton County, the budget to get a budget that is normally set to be elected to be elected county commissioner. You'd have to budget well over $1 million, and some people have said the figure is about 1.5 or 1.6 million dollars to be able to be elected to office for a job that pays $65,000 a year. Does that make any sense?
No.
All right. To be elected to Congress, we're talking millions upon millions of dollars for one election for a job that pays $1.75 a year. That make any sense?
And
so
I
if you're going to be reelected, your full-time job is to raise money for your next election. That's the problem.
Guys, though, I don't think this should be a full-time gig. It wasn't initially,
Of course not. No, but it is now.
Right. They bastardized that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, county commissioner, it's a part-time gig, but it's a pretty good part-time gig that pays 65 G's. It's 19 in front of 11. I'm Darryl Parks. Your line open up 513-749-7000. The big one, 700 W. What a game last night. I was listening in the ninth inning, and it was down. They were down by a run, and the walk-off home run last night, 6-5, the final as the Reds beat the Cardinals. Today, 7:10 start. We got Bronson Arroyo on the mound for the Redlegs. For our beloved Redlegs. Coverage starts at 6:06 with the inside pitch after Sports Talk with Ken Brew this afternoon on 700 WLW. All right, let's see here. Let's see what Martin has to say. Martin, you're on the big one.
Well, hey, Darryl, I've got two things, actually. The first thing, like earlier I was listening and you were talking about how the flat tax and using the 14th Amendment as legal precedent, basically as, that's why we should have that, and then talking about the Supreme Court who got the thing totally backwards. I was really just struck by that. Was just really insightful. But the thing that really made me want to call, well, besides Paul's invisible plan, is what can we do? And the only thing that I can come up with is fire all the incumbents, good, bad, indifferent. Fire them all, and just let's start flushing everything down the toilet until someone says, "Hey, maybe we should start looking at the Constitution." Either that or
Martin,
I mean,
if you haven't read the Constitution, I know there are a lot of people that have. I mean, it's not a difficult read.
Nope. It's very simple. Very straightforward.
This past week, I was what show was I watching? There was one show, one of the cable news shows, and they were talking about how this whole debt ceiling could be voted on quickly. And the legalese, and it's basically a sentence or two. It's not very long, but even that is written in legalese, where it's like, wow, what are they talking about? And the Constitution is written in pretty simple terms.
Well,
and to your point, I mean, I mean, they choose not to follow the Constitution.
Well, here's the thing, Darryl. The part of the Constitution that's my very favorite part is the part that says you're not allowed to use one part to contradict another part. Mm-hmm. I don't think anyone reads that or understands it. If we as citizens and lawyers who are supposed to be able to sue for us, if they would just say, these two things are contradictory, how is this possible? I'm going to, and I don't even know where that's in the Constitution, but I know I'm going to cite whatever amendment.
Martin, you brought up that Supreme Court case in 1973 I made mention of. Here's the ruling from the court. The states, in the exercise of their taxing powers, are subject to the requirements of the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment. But that clause imposes no iron rule of equality. The states may impose different specific taxes upon different trades and professions and may vary the rate of excise upon various products, and it goes on from there. But I mean, at that point in 1973, that is when the ability of this latest debate of class warfare, which is what it's all about, taxing one group of people more than, Martin, look, here's my feeling. To be a member of society, this is really simple. To be a member of society, the cost is what you pay in tax, period. If you, let's say a 10% flat tax, if you happen to make $1,000 in a year, send in $100. If you make $10,000 a year, send in $1,000. If you make $200,000 a year, which 200 or 250,000, which tends to be that pivot point for the debate now, if you make $200,000 a year, send in $20,000.
Yeah.
Simple.
Yep, and the beautiful thing, I don't know what law this is. It's kind of like a law of physics, but it basically says that the simpler something is, the more likely it is to be true. So using that logic, how much more simple can it be?
Right now, close all the tax loopholes, flat tax. The cost of being a member of our society is 10%. Thank you very much. End of story.
I'm
done.
On board 100%.
Yeah, I mean, this whole debate as far as taxing a certain segment of the population differently than another. Do they do that when you're paying for a gallon of gasoline?
Nope.
Of course not.
Nope,
I mean, are they seeing what your are they looking for your tax returns when you go to fill up at the BP station so you can pay a higher rate of tax on the gallon of gas? Of course not. Foolish. The cost of living in our society is this, period. 10%, 15%, whatever it is. Figure it out. Get rid of all the loopholes, make it easy. 10 before 11 o'clock, 513-749-7000. Dan Carroll joins you at 12:06 this morning or this afternoon on 700 WLW. 700WLW.com. Look up Darryl Parks. Go to my blog. See the dead guy. talking about our good friend Roy out of Newark, Ohio. Roy Miracle, who dropped dead earlier this month, and then his family. They're Buckeye fans. His family did the OHIO at his memorial at the church, the Methodist Church in Newark, and Roy was the eye. It's on my blog, 700WLW.com. Search Darryl. Dan Carroll's going to be up at 12:06, and he'll be talking about, Martin called in early. He'll be talking about medical marijuana and whether it should be legalized in the state of Ohio or not. Dan Carroll at 12:06 today. Chris in Athens. How you doing, Chris? You're on the big one.
I'm doing quite well. It's great to talk to you, Darryl. I feel like there's a missing part of this discussion. We talk about, well, we raise taxes, or we cut spending, or we do both. Maybe if you're truly enlightened, you might consider that. But what about actually defaulting? We hear a lot of apocalyptic statements from Ben Bernanke, who, if you followed Ben Bernanke since before the crash, the guy's totally uncredible, totally didn't see it coming, totally snow jobbed us. He was there right with Hank Paulson, holding the stick up, holding the gun as they transferred money over to the big banks, this extending the debt as they go forward. I mean, this is all just part of this great transfer. And nobody's saying, you know what? Define apocalyptic. What happens? Do a few bad banks with horrific amounts of bad debt on their books go bust? And maybe my company, who's illiquid, goes bust too? Maybe that should happen. Maybe we need a hard reset, and nobody's discussing it. Short-term pain, but what's that do for my children going forward? I'm willing to take the hit so that they can live in a country that does something and that actually makes something and doesn't have to live and wallow in the pain of these bad debts.
Well, Chris, I'm going to give credit to Denny, who wrote on my Facebook page. He said, "Isn't taxing a generation that may not even be born yet the ultimate taxation without representation?"
Completely.
How about that? That is profound. And to your question, what are we missing in all of this? It's very simple, and it's one word. You know what it is?
What's that?
Truth.
Yes.
We don't know what the truth is. And
You're
you
right.
can't believe this side, you can't believe that side, you can't believe this person, you can't believe that person. They're all playing politics, and no one is willing to tell us the truth and give us the hard facts. You know, the reality, you and I both know that this is unsustainable. You and I both know that, hey, look, at the base level of morality, it's about paying bills and not being a deadbeat. All right. But to your point, I mean, maybe it's time for a hard reset and saying, all right, we're going to deal with some really nasty pain here for a while. And whatever happens, but we're going to get our house in order and we're going to get our checkbook in order and we're finally going to balance this stuff. And we're going to balance it and going forward, we're going to be fiscally responsible with our finances.
Yeah.
But the problem is, there's a flaw in that though, Chris. The flaw is that if we do that and we do a hard reset, the people that got us into this mess are still going to be in control.
That is a dilemma. I do agree with that.
And that's the perfect word. That is the dilemma in your idea.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, Chris, I hope you have a wonderful weekend.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Well, you take care. Enjoy. It's going to be hot. It's going to be a wonderful weekend. Maybe some rain. Lord knows we need that. And this week's going to be a hot one as well. Dan Carroll coming up at 12:06 here on the big one, 700 WLW. A little bit later on this afternoon at Sports Talk with Ken Brew at 3:06, and that leads into the second game of the series as the Reds take on the St. Louis Cardinals at Great American Ballpark. It's going to be a hot one tonight, muggy. It's going to be humid, but a perfect night for July baseball along the river, the Ohio River in downtown Cincinnati. All coming up today on the home of the Cincinnati Reds, 700 WLW.